Today's story is Monty Takes Charge of the Barter Store on pages 315 to 321. A little bit about this story. This is a biography, which is a non-fictional account about the story of a real-life person. The setting of this story is St. Joseph, Michigan in the mid-1800s, and the story mostly takes place at the Barter Store, owned by Captain Boughton, and the story describes the Barter Store as a shabby warehouse near the river. The customers are mostly farmers, and the process is bartering. The farmers bring in their goods from the farm, like their corn, maybe chicken, eggs, things like that, and they negotiate with the barter store and they get the things they need, maybe sugar or fabric for clothing, clothes, things like that. The store is described as disorganized. There's no organizational system. There are no counters, no shelves. There's no places to sit. There are no prices or any labeling system. And the farmers' products are all mixed in, sitting on the floor with the items from the barter store. We learn a lot about the characters through the dialogue in this story. For example, Mr. Carver is the store manager. And this part, when we first are introduced to Mr. Carver, Monty walks in and he kind of guesses that this person is Mr. Carver. And this is an indirect dialogue. You can see two people are talking or arguing in this case, and they don't tell us exactly what they say, but there's a conversation going on. And it says, a young man was arguing violently with a farmer and his half-grown son. So the boy wasn't satisfied with the fit or color, was he? Now that was just too bad. This was plenty good enough for country wear, take it or leave it. So the farmer and his maybe teenage son come in, and they're bringing their corn that they've grown, and the son would like to buy a suit or trade the corn for a suit, but Mr. Carver is trying to give a suit to the boy that's not very good quality, and he thinks it's fine enough. So we can see here that he's looking down on the farmers. Mr. Carver is not very kind to them. You would never want to argue with a customer, right? That's a terrible way to do business, but he sees them as a less than him, so he's not giving them a good deal. And then when he introduces himself to Monty and he's talking about how the store works, he says, no loafing around here, as you'll find out. So that means like goofing off, or he's telling him he needs to work hard, right? Which, if you're going to tell that to somebody, Monty probably assumes that, so he may be making an assumption that Monty wants to goof off. And then about Miss Maddie says this. She says this about Carver. Says he leaves the store to Carver, or sorry, this is about Captain Boughton. And Carver don't care. All he's interested in is to bargain the farmers down as low as he can. So Carver doesn't care about how the store is ran. All he cares about is that he can get things from the farmers for as cheaply as possible, which is really taking advantage of them. And then Monty says he's so hateful to the farmers, talks to them like they were dirt. So Monty's obviously really bothered by how Mr. Carver treats the farmers. He thinks that they should be treated more respectfully. So we get a lot of information about Mr. Carver from his dialogue and also the other characters' dialogue about Mr. Carver. So he looks down on the customers. He's pretty rude to the customers and to the other employees. And he doesn't run the store well. Okay, Monty. So Monty, Montgomery Ward, or Aaron Montgomery Ward, he is a real person. He's the protagonist in the story. And it doesn't tell us in this story, but he only went to school, I think, until about age 14. And after this story, he goes on to create like a mail catalog ordering company. And then it eventually becomes a department store, and he ends up being a very wealthy person later in life. But you can tell from this story how he gets there, right? We learn a lot about his character. So he says when Maddie is trying to kind of find out about him, she asks him if he drinks or smokes, and he says, so's my ma, sorry. It means that she's also strict. I've never touched liquor or tobacco, ma'am. She'd make my pa lick me if I did. So we can see, and by the way, lick me means beat me, right? This is an old way to say that if he had ever smoked or drank, then the mother would make the father beat the boy, right? So we can see he comes from a family who is pretty strict and they care about his character. And about the store, Monty says, I like the work, but Miss Maddie, does the store have to be such a mess? I don't mean to find fault. So he thinks the store should be run in a more organized way, but he's saying it in a really nice way. He doesn't want to complain or say that what they're doing is bad, but he thinks that it could be improved. And then this is when he said about Carver, you think he could be a little more polite. So he already, as a young man, thinks that customers should be treated politely and that the store should be run in a very organized and nice manner. And then Miss Maddie from the dialogue, she says, "Here, I'll help you. I like to keep them sorted out, though Mr. Carver thinks that's just my fussiness." So we can see that Miss Maddie is a very organized person and she thinks things should be organized. But Mr. Carver, again, is looking down on her and just thinks she's being picky, right? Okay, so when finally Monty, after Mr. Carver leaves the barter store and he goes and makes his own store, an older employee is put in charge, but he's quite old and he doesn't actually care what Monty and Maddie and Miss Maddie do. So Monty's explaining how he thinks that they could improve the store. And they're talking about putting price tags, and it says this was Monty's idea. And Miss Maddie listened sympathetically while he explained it. And then she says, "It looks like a grand scheme to me, Monty. I'm in favor of trying it." She's a very patient and kind person, and she is willing to try his ideas, right? She's been there a long time, so she could say, "Oh, that's ridiculous. We've always done it this way." But instead, she patiently listens and thinks his ideas are good. Okay. And the barter store. So some changes that Monty makes at the barter store, the changes he makes make the store more pleasant to both the managers and employees and the customers. And when the customers are happy, that increases the sales. So for organization, Monty puts nice displays in. So each of the products is displayed really nicely, right? And then they have a section where you can try on shoes. So he puts in a bench so you can try on shoes while you sit. That's way better than standing. And then there's mirrors. So if the ladies want to try on some hats, they can see how they look in it. And it said the place no longer looked like a cluttered jungle. So obviously, customers are going to feel much more comfortable walking into a store that's neatly organized and looks nice. Monty also had the idea of a dollar due bill for the farm goods. So previously, for instance, a farmer would come in with his corn, and Carver would just trade him for something, right? He would not say what the corn was worth. He would say, "Oh, well, you could have this suit for that," right? He wouldn't really give them a choice either. Depending on what they had too much of, he would push the farmers to get that thing. But Monty thought that the farmers should get a price tag placed on their farm goods. So he wasn't going to give them cash for it because they really wanted the farmers to shop at the store, but he'd give them a piece of paper saying what their farm goods were worth. And then they could go around the store and they could spend that amount of money on whatever they wanted to buy. And it said, this new system appealed strongly to the farmers. Even though they never saw the money, it was gratifying to have a cash figure placed on the fruits of their labor. And you can see this is Monty's respect for the farmers, right? He's treating them respectfully, he's being very kind to them, and this is the kind of customer service that everybody wants. Also, all the things that they're trying to sell in the store, now they're putting price tags. So rather than not knowing how much you're paying for something and just kind of bargaining, you can see the price clearly displayed and you can kind of think in your head, okay, I have this much money, I'd like to buy some of this and some of this, right? It's much easier to shop. And then at one point in time, Miss Maddie mentions that they're overstocked on collar buttons, and that's why they're trying to push people to buy those. So Monty says they need to keep careful track of what people are buying and not order too much of any one thing, right? If people are buying a lot of one item, then they'll order more of that. That way they won't have items that are overstocked and need to be pushed on customers. Overall, Monty wanted to show a lot of respect and courtesy for the customers, and also he treated his fellow employees that same way. This is the most important change that Monty makes, and because of that, the barter store becomes a store that customers like to shop at, and eventually Monty is elevated to the manager of the store. All right, guys, I hope you liked this story. Let me know if you have any questions.